What is going on, friends, and welcome back to the Minecraft Hub channel. Today we are on the Hermitcraft Season 8 world, and we wanted to wait a little bit because we wanted everybody to know the season had ended and things like that before we did one of these episodes. But by now, if you don't know, Hermitcraft is over. If you haven't seen any of the Hermit's final episodes, I definitely recommend you go and check those out. You can go and watch any one of them. There's a great animation that they had made and everything, and it looks incredible. So definitely go and check that out. But now we are on the Hermitcraft Season 8 world, right here in my favorite spot on the world so far, Bodum. This is just an absolutely incredible build. So Bodum is of course the home to Impulse, Mumbo, Pearlescent Moon, Scar, and Grian, and they all had their gigabase in this section. And this is just really a truly amazing world. They talked a lot on the season about Bodum being laggy, and it definitely is. I spawned in on another section of the server over by False Symmetry's base, and it was much less laggy than it is over here. It even struggles as a single player world rather than a server. So that says a lot about the amount of entities and everything they have in this area. We're going to be doing a full world tour of the Hermitcraft Season 8 world. It's actually fairly small. They built on the same island, so it shouldn't take that long to make it to everybody's base. So we'll start off over here right at Impulse's base. And if I miss anything, just let me know down in the comment section below. Hopefully I don't though. I think I've got everything covered. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Impulse's base over here, this amazing chocolate factory or candy factory where he makes all sorts of candies. This thing is absolutely incredible. I love this build. The whole factory style looks incredible, and he built it up insanely fast. This base was actually mostly done, the structures of it, at the beginning of the season. Of course, outside here, we have his shop. His starter base was over here as well, but he did tear that down, so unfortunately that's no longer here. Of course, Mumbo's cult is right here. The redstone does seem to be a little broken for the villagers crying. Harmless Harvest, Teresa, Pillbug, Volcarbo, Grian's and Pearlescent Moon starter bases, Scar's enormous starter base, if you can even call it that. There's just so many cool things in this world. Let's go ahead and check out the inside of the factory over here. Of course, we have the garages for the delivery trucks. These things, these are so small compared to the rest of the build, but they are really cool features of it. Right through here is the door. And this place is just incredible. Obviously, it's not super detailed on the inside. It was a very short season, so only some of the rooms of the inside are done. This chocolate river, of course, is incredible. Geminitay is actually the one who came over and designed these trees. This is just such a cool section. I love the different uses of mushrooms and things like that for like the candy being placed everywhere. It just looks so good. Over here is where we have the storage room, and this is something he spent a long time working on to get the whole thing automatically sorted. That whole process is back here, and geez, this section is just laggier than ever. But here we have the whole automatic sorting system. I don't even know how much he used this. I guess we can open up the chest and see, but I know Mumbo really didn't put anything in his storage system. We're just gonna break that before the season ended. And yeah, it looks like Impulse didn't really get a chance to use much of this storage system, which is quite unfortunate considering the amount of time they've put into this. Over here is the cactus and bamboo farm. They're actually farms that complement each other. Everything that gets harvested flies out of this right there and goes down into this system right here, where you can collect XP from whatever's being smelted, normally cactus. Right here is the inside of the giant smoke tower. He did have a few different ideas for this that never ended up actually happening, but there are even some shulkers in here, so you could fly up this whole smoke tower. Impulse's base, also to extend it as part of the gigabase, he basically made it so it was just polluting Mumbo's base, which I think is a hilarious idea. It is pretty hard to tie a factory into these big bases just that are completely wilderness, so actually making it pollute the wilderness I think is a genius idea of finding a way to tie it into the gigabase. Now let's check out Mumbo's base. Mumbo's base is absolutely incredible. This is definitely one of the best builds from Mumbo by far, and one of the best builds in general. This base just looks so cool. I love all these little buildings that he built over here. They're all so detailed. They also most of them are built on the same style structure, just using different colors, but the way he did it makes it look like no two are really the same. He even switched up some roof patterns, things like that, to really make some differences in these builds, and you can actually get to all the builds from the same path, which I think is a great feature of this base. Mumbo put a lot of time and effort into designing this and making this final product, and it really does look absolutely amazing. The statue on top is also incredible as well. It's definitely a great finisher for the top of this little armchair build. I know he had a lot of ideas for what he wanted to do up here, but I think this final statue design that he ended with was really a great way to finish off this build. See this storage room? He did the glass layer effect up top so that the ceiling really just looks like it's fading off into the distance and goes on forever. I think that's a great effect. The storage room here, absolutely massive and unfortunately pretty much unused. There is nothing in these chests. So moving on from Mumbo's, we have Grian's base right here, or in this mountain rather. This is the G Train, his shop for the season, where he sold numerous amounts of items. He made a lot of diamonds from this shop, which all went into this system over here that Scar ended up emptying right before the end of the season. But Grian created the Midnight Alley, kind of a Harry Potter themed build with all these floating candles and these incredible builds throughout the alley. This thing is really, really cool looking. At the end, of course, is the Green God's Bank, and then underneath there's actually all his villager trading and everything like that. This is just such a cool looking build. He spent the whole season working on it. He wanted to add in different things to each of these, which he did, at least for the fronts, to give it just kind of a feel of different shops and things like that throughout the whole alley. But one of the coolest parts of this alley is actually a section that Scar worked on. And over here, Scar worked on this. This was supposed to be kind of a nocturne alley part of the build, and I think this is just such a cool section. All these kind of spooky builds. You can even see like the wither through that window. Scar put a lot of work on the details of this whole thing. Besides that, on top of this, Grian, Pearlescent Moon, Mumbo, even Scar all worked on the terraforming of this. Even Mumbo did kind of the custom trees that you see up there, the bridge and the buildings. Grian did these custom trees down here, and they all worked on the terraforming. These are Scar's mountains up here. Unfortunately, the back was never finished. Scar had a lot of troubles towards the end of the season as far as his health, so hopefully he gets better and we see a lot more content from him in the future. Right here was Grian's telescope, or his observatory, while he was trying to figure out the problems of the big moon. And then over here we have this huge terraformed mountain, which I think is really incredible, especially with the different blocks that are in it. You know, there's moss and dirt, which make a lot of sense, but there's even wood, which the colors just match so well. And then this huge, beautiful castle on top from Pearlescent Moon. Pearl actually wasn't too happy with this build in the end. I think it looks incredibly cool, but she didn't really feel like it fit her personality or her building style, and she wants to do a lot different things in Season 9. In this actual mountain, she's got some farms, things like that going on, just to try to make use of the space that she had in here, of course, and it does connect to the inside of the build as well. And then right here, this used to be the giant wall of copper where Grian was aging his copper, but as he didn't need it anymore, Pearl turned it into a waterfall with a llama in it, and I think that is a great idea. It looks incredible, just a very nice feature of this whole build. Now, we've seen Scar's mountains, but there is this whole section over here, the Swaggin. The Swaggin was his starter base and also his shops for the season, where he sold various things. This is just so cool looking though. Scar, of course, did put a lot of work into the mountains, getting all that terraformed up, but the majority of his work throughout the season was with all of these builds. He did one wagon at a time. This over here was kind of the garage for the wagons, the smaller wagons at least, as these big ones would definitely not fit in there. But I think the details of this wagon are incredible. Even just the pathways that he created right here. You can see there's like trees and bushes fallen underneath. This was actually kind of a lamppost that he had knocked over. He originally had it facing that way and then realized it was the wrong way for the direction of this wagon and moved it around. The garage over here, great as well. I wonder if the skeleton actually made it into the world download. I assume it did. But yeah, there's the skeleton wearing Scar's famous hat. And this skeleton has an enchanted bow as well and is absolutely lethal. A lot of fun moments from that thing throughout the season. We are pretty much going to be looking at absolutely everything in this world today, so this is definitely going to be a longer video. This right here is the hot air balloon that Scar wanted to use to actually escape from the Hermitcraft Season 8 world as the moon was incoming and going to crash into the ground. The only way to actually get this thing to work though is by jumping down into the bottom hole underneath. And this is where they all fell through, right down into the hole. And down here, of course, is the room where BTM was revealed. This was Grian's big idea for the season. So I guess moving on slightly from Bodum now, still kind of connected to Bodum, this is Cubfan's base, or rather his giant biome. Cubfan spent the first part of the season working on the dripstone cavern right here, or canyon, and then he worked for the rest of the season on building up this huge biome filled with lava, these dead coral trees. There are just so many little cool things that he built that I think really work well. I love the amethyst that he used through here as flowers or just kind of sprouting up from the ground. This whole biome just looks absolutely incredible. So Cub's base is actually within this canyon right here. If you go down into it, there are different sections where you'll find parts of his base, like down here. You can see we have a whole storage room, all labeled with signs so you know exactly where everything is here. There's also his snow and ice shop in this canyon and so much more. I also love just the little added fossil details here as well. Just such a cool biome build. You can tell, of course, Cubfan had a lava farm, but you can tell that this took a long time to do because imagine building an entire river out of lava like he did here. This is really just an incredible amount of time and effort that Cubfan put into this build. Right here, this was one of the mini games from the end of the season, Leaf Spleef. This was actually a build very early on in the season, but they ended up having a tournament towards the end of the season as well. And of course, the drip leaf falls behind you, and you're trying to knock your opponent down into the leaves below. Next up, we will check out the Evil Empire over here. So this area actually has builds from multiple of the hermits. Suma is, of course, the main one that was working on this. Of course, Evil Suma is right there, the giant statue of him. But Ijevin, Vintage Beef, they built builds over here as well, just selling different evil items. There was really a lot of cool moments from here. But over here is Suma's base, or good Suma's base, at least, when he wasn't being consumed by evil and working on that over there. So then right over next to Suma's base, we also have B-double-O's base and kind of the rest of the Big Eye district. Right there is Corralis's Paradise House or Paradise Island. He's got his battleship as well. And then, yep, up here is his space station. One of his ways of trying to figure out the moon. And then over there, you can see off in the distance is Tango Tech's industrial district that he has over there, kind of his copper farm, everything like that. And then also his space station where he was researching the moon. But let's start off with B-double-O's right here. So this is B00's Moon Starter House. This thing looks absolutely amazing. I love all the different blocks throughout this whole thing. And of course, the classic clock hanging off of it. B00 pretty much likes to farm everything by hand. It just kind of gives him a more fun experience in the game. So that's what all these are. And then he's got these builds right here, which he did towards the end of the season that I think all look really incredible. I love the mixture of the different andesite, the bricks, everything like that. It all just came together so well in these little builds. He also terraformed this huge mountain right here. As you can see, the entire thing right here is hollow. He gave it to Tango Tech to work on the inside. Tango did work on, as you can see, of course, Fifi, the giant in the middle, and then this whole kind of lava deep slate mixture around the outside, even a little fossil there. And then inside here was the Big Eyes storage room, and this was an automatic storage room that Tango worked on that could hold a lot of the items that you would need in game, and even had a miscellaneous chest right here for anything that didn't fit into these slots. This is the Big Eye shopping district. There was a lot of fun things that happened here. Of course, the boat prank where this thing was covered in boats and had a huge boat up there. This was actually a build by Scar to prank B00. He went inside and then was attacked by charged creepers, but just watching Scar try to build it alone was hilarious enough. As you can see, there are some places where more buildings could be built, but the buildings that were built were all built in the same kind of style, kind of like a little Italian village is the feeling that I get from it. I think this little style is amazing. I love all these little builds. There's even some shops for, you know, boats, things like that, ladders, TNT. A lot of these shops B00 made, like this bookshelf shop. And then of course Tango was selling iron from here, which was being fed by his iron farm. Definitely a very lovely little shopping district. Unfortunately, besides Tango's iron shop, it was not very successful. As you can see, this is where their profits went, and it's full of cobwebs and even a bit of wood. So really no diamonds went into there, except for a few that Grian gave him, I believe. Right here is one of the Big Eyes pass and gas shops, and this is where anybody could come refuel on some XP or the few things they sold inside, such as some enchantment books, some golden carrots, you know, just random things that you may need. There was multiple of these around, and as a lot of the hermits weren't flying at the beginning of the season, this was a great place to just ride up with your horse as you followed around on these pathways. Right over here is a little circus tent that Tango built after coming back to the season, and this was the zombie bumper boats. They did a few rounds of this throughout the season, and basically the goal was to kill the other person in the boat with your zombie. Definitely a pretty fun game to watch, and of course a great game from Tango Tech. And then over here we have Vintage Beef's UFO. This, I think, is just such a really cool build, namely for the terraforming that he did underneath. A lot of coarse dirt. This area is all blackened and smoking from the UFO landing on this section of the earth. I think it is just so cool. The inside, though, is like a maze. It is pretty hard to find anything. Of course, for Vintage, it was a little bit easier as he actually built it, but for anybody else, it is kind of hard to find anything inside of here. Next, we'll move on to Geminitay's area right here. This was kind of the whole swamp where False Symmetry, Geminitay, and Stress Monster built. And then iJevin is also over there. And as you can see, the Octagon is over that way. So Geminitay built this lovely woodland mansion. I think the woodland mansion is great. I love the very natural feel that it has, especially with the moss roof, things like that. And then she has custom trees and just a lot of really cool builds around this whole area. This is just a super beautiful section of land. Geminitay, of course, is new this season, as well as Pearlescent Moon, and I think they both had great first seasons on Hermitcraft. They fit in so well with the other hermits, like they had been on Hermitcraft forever, and they also built some incredible things throughout the season. And as you can see off in the distance, there are some pretty scary things from the Octagon crew, from Doc M77 and Rindog. But next, let's go over to False Symmetry's builds. So her starter house was over here. She built up this lovely little mushroom house, which of course has an upside down llama on top thanks to Pearlescent Moon. She built a few of those around the server. False Symmetry though wanted to build a few of these buildings around, kind of create a whole area. She did a lot of work down in the swamp here, even becoming Shrek at one point. And then of course she has this huge section of land up here that was being flown off by a giant eagle, which also has some mushroom builds on top of it as well. I think this is super lovely, having actual builds on top of this land being flown off, and even on top of the eagle. It's just a really cool little feature. Inside of this floating piece of land though was a shop that of course does not take derp coin, but this is False's underground, which sold everything that you could find in the underground. So as you can see, deep slates, some ores, some amethyst, things like that. Not sure how successful this shop was throughout the season, but she did make a few sales, especially on things like deep slate. Deep slate was a huge block this season. Grian sold a ton of it. Nobody really wants to mine deep slate, so it was definitely something that all the hermits just wanted to buy rather than mine. Down in this hole though is where False decided to build her storage room and things like that later on in the season. I think the inside of this is so cool. I love cave bases like this, so seeing False work on this kind of cave with different quadrants was really cool. Over here is a potion and brewing room, all those supplies. That is her main storage system right there. Just a lot of cool things down here. This is another one of False's shops, the Redstone Emporium. Sold different redstone items, different redstone components is a better word, where anybody could come and buy here. And she had different deals of the week, and you'd get a free gift if you spent 16 diamonds. This is the railway that False Symmetry, geminitay, and Stress Monster worked on. It goes between all their bases underground, and just a way to connect them all up. Stress decided to take some time off at the beginning of the season. She came back later on in the season and worked on this mega base over here. Unfortunately, as the season did end fairly quickly, she didn't get to finish it, but she built up the entire front of it. I do love the direction she was going with it. I think it would have been a very cool looking build. I think the combination of glass that she put in here and also the different warped items really combined well with the deep slate. And I would have loved to see this build finished, but unfortunately the season did end extremely quickly this time around. So the next place that we have to go, we'll check out iJevons over here. So these are some of Jevon's shops that he had right here. The shulker shop is my absolute favorite. I love the shulker box that he built here. So this is the inside of the shulker shop. You could buy, beacons, shulker boxes, and even some books, some sponges, things like that. So this is the mega base that iJevon worked on, and this thing goes all the way down to bedrock. As you can see, he has covered up the bedrock floor though with different layers of this green glass to give it that super cool effect that you can really see on the walls right here. The walls are of course super cool, different variations of deep slate, cobblestone, tuff. You can even see he's got some water features in the middle here with kelp, things like that. And then these massive bridges that connect to his farm, such as the sugarcane farm. He's got some villagers in the back there working on some stuff. And then he has his storage rooms as well. This, of course, was a smaller storage room right in the middle here with an enchantment room. But over here was really his main storage system that has every item you could think of in the game. He has one on this side, and then over here we actually see some villager trading. So this is where he would get all his books that he sold in his shops, and then also for his own armor and things like that. On this side, we have a huge furnace array, all automatic, so you could input everything into this chest, and it would go into this furnace system and be outputted. Definitely a very simple system to use for smelting all of your items. Right next to Jevon's build over here is the horse course, and this was worked on by the Big Eyes crew. There's even a breeder over here for horses, and this was just, you know, kind of a racetrack for the horses. BWO was riding a horse pretty much throughout the entire season, as he was part of the No Wings Club for as long as possible. Before we head over to Horsehead Farms though, let's go and check out what Iskal and Etho worked on this season. So both of these guys didn't spend too much time on Hermitcraft after the beginning of the season, but they did have some pretty cool looking builds on this huge shattered biome over here. So as you can see, they built throughout this whole thing, even have a hanging house, things like that going on. This is all the redstone from Etho on the outside of this build. Even though they didn't spend too much time on the season, they did actually end up building a lot over here. There's so much going on. It goes throughout this whole shattered biome. There's of course their base, their storage room. There's so much going on throughout this whole thing. This was their storage room at the beginning of the season, the metals for the No Wings Club, of course. And as you can see, they could store some of the items they had at the beginning of the season. The storage room wasn't enough though, and they ended up building another one later on. But unfortunately, as I said, they did not spend too much time on Hermitcraft this season. So let's head over to Horsehead Farms now. So over here, before we get to Horsehead, was the area that Zombie Cleo and Joe Hills worked on. So this right here was the mega base castle that they were working on throughout the season. I think the gradient of this castle is super cool looking that they have on these sides. This castle went through a lot of changes throughout the season, but I think it looks really cool right now. You don't see too many castles in Minecraft built with, you know, this sandstone or even the gradient that they have down here, especially since some of these are brand new blocks to the game. But I love the stripped birch that they have, the different stripped logs, the dripstone that then fades into the smooth sandstone by up top. Also, the black stained glass and deep slate, of course, look really good with this build as a roof. Over here, we have Hypno's Mushroom. This was a super cool build that he did at the beginning of the season, where he actually put all his storage throughout the season. On the inside here, if we go up, this is the inside of this mushroom. He kept it very natural, all natural, you know, a lot of moss, a lot of glowberries, things like that to keep it lit up. And then he has his storage system in here as well. Right next to Hypno was XB Crafted's domes. This was his project throughout the season. He was working on all these different domes. Right here is the submarine airlock, which I think was super cool. He has the submarine entering there and even a way to get all the water out, or hypothetically get all the water out. And here was the main dome. And then this over here was a huge attack happening by this sandworm, and Zombie Cleo came over and did all the work with the armor stands, as she is so known for. Of course, he's also got some farms going on in this domed area. And then XB Crafted and Hypno worked on a shopping district as well. Since there was no uniform shopping district this year, there was basically a bunch of smaller shopping districts. Of course, the Bodum crew, then the Big Eyes crew, and also Horsehead Farms were the main ones. There's an iron farm here, and everything is then sold from these little market stalls. You come up by arrows, could buy bones, and all the prices are listed right in the middle. This is from all their various farms, such as the iron farm and everything else they had built up. And to really show off that this was Horsehead Farms, they built up 2 giant horse heads. This is the laboratory that Zadaf worked on throughout the season. He had a whole system in here, and then of course the testing room in this laboratory where he brought hermits over to test them on different things. And it was really one of the funnest parts of the season, watching the hermits go through all the testing processes. And then even Zadaf went into the testing room himself later on in the season. I believe now we've seen a large majority of the world, but there is still the Octagon area with Doc M and Rendog, and then also Wells Knight area. Of course, his mega base that he was working on, and then the Yes Wings Club. There are, of course, some outlying farms that we're probably not going to go to, like Doc M and Rendog's Industrial District, or out where Mumbo has his gas farm. Things like that we're not going to go check out, but we will go and check out the last couple bases that we have. So this was the schematic for the lightning machine that they built up at the beginning of the season. This pretty much terrified everybody, as it was continuous lightning strikes, extremely loud, especially for geminitay, whose base was right there, but a very fun design and super cool, to say the least. It was actually viewer submitted and they decided to build it, so that was a lot of fun to see. This whole area right here was built up by Rendog. He was working on just adding a lot of wheat farms in, and then also adding these deep slate buildings that tie in really well with the wheat. Just a really large contrast there that looks super nice together. Over here is the Octagon, and it has this massive deep slate bridge leading over. This was the watchtower where they actually went over the weekly numbers of sales. Up here, oh geez, up here is the deep slate and also the diamonds, and I'm now realizing that deep slate shows up as wood for me. So that's, if you've seen some wood that you thought was weird, it was probably deep slate. That's it's interesting. But down here they have this beautifully terraformed island with all the amethyst, dead coral, things like that, and then the actual Octagon inside here with all the different shops for deep slate, shulker boxes. Pretty much anything you could think of, you could find inside of the Octagon. There are more sections over here. Of course, that is the shulker farm right there, I believe. And then over here is the switch to basically make all the incredible things that Doc M did this season happen. This huge redstone device that he hid inside of this structure here was basically how he made things like the Octagon portal happen. I have no understanding of the science or the Minecraft feature behind this and why it works, but for some reason it does work. And that's how Doc M did all the fun stuff this season. Now, just over this way is what I believe the last base that we haven't checked out today. This is Wells Knight's floating island, and this thing is absolutely huge. I love the floating island build ideas. This one is super cool. Of course, the interior has the storage system and this cool little hallway that he worked on. Definitely a super huge floating island. And as you can see down here, there's a lot more room to do other things. He just worked on this storage system here, and I think it looks super cool looking. I love these rings around the floating island. It kind of gives it a feel like the island is being floated up by these rings. And then down here is Wells Knight's cabin, and then somewhere over here is the Yes Wings Club, or somewhere not far off. Let's go and find that. So right here is spawn of the Hermitcraft season. This is where they would come every time their beds were broken, especially after they decide to join Mumbo's cult and throw their beds into the fire. And then over here is the final thing we haven't shown off yet, and that is the Yes Wings Club. So this is where Wells Knight and Impulse decided to build the Yes Wings Club and tried to encourage people to don an elytra. The elytras were not a huge part of the beginning of the season, as the world is fairly small and they wanted to make the game a little more difficult at the beginning of the season, just to kind of add a fun little feature. So people could come here, buy some rockets, buy an elytra, buy the whole package, and join the club. There was also a very cool aviator's hat that you could get if you join the club. And one other thing which I don't believe I have shown off yet is the nether. So the nether I have not fully gotten around to looking at yet, as it is kind of confusing going through all the hallways. Some of them are labeled, but some of them are not. and this is how they got to each other's bases and all the different districts. So as you can see, they did some work on the tunnels, everything like that. There's even a few shops in here. This right here is, of course, the moon prophecy foretold in the paintings. Over there is the end portal. There is just a lot going on in the Nether, but it's nice that they have a whole area to use to get to each other's bases a little bit easier. So that is pretty much all that we have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it. And if you're new to our channel, hit that subscribe button as well. I believe this video is going to end up being about 30 minutes long. So if you made it to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. This is pretty small world, but still took a long time to go through everybody's bases and things like that. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.